Transvaal Technikon, top of his class. And someone recommended this guy to me. I said, okay, don't come. And then that's how we started, from a PowerPoint, and said, okay, PowerPoint, how do we make it work? We leased a farm in Vryheid and KZN, bought some cattle from a farmer in Paul Petersburg, put them in the farm, created a website, got some guys to put a website up for us. We put up all the, they actually took a template for a fashion website, like a fashion store. Then instead of the clothes, we put the cows. So took the photos of the cows, and made sure we put them nice and neat, tagged the cows, branded them with the same number on the thigh as well. So it's what's on the ear is on the thigh of the cow, also on the computer that we project into. And then in October the 13th of 2015, we launched. We called everyone, like you guys today are. We called the Sunday Times, we called ETV, we called all the people who connected. And surprisingly, we had a very great publicist, Sibongi, who also happens to be my wife, who made sure that all these guys come. And we began a process of making the world believe that cows are a store of value, as they used to be. And then ever since then, we've grown from the 26 cows, which we bought at the time, it was around 1,000 rand we bought them for, took a loan from our other business. Today, to a platform that's got over 3,000 investors, active investors as we speak, with over the last 8 years we've been alive, with over 150 million rands invested from everyone in South Africa, across the world, all colors, all races, really rallying behind the fact that someone must fund agriculture, someone must fund farming, true crowd farming, and get a return out of it. It hasn't been uphill, it hasn't been just a one-way journey. As in any startup, we've had setbacks, we've learned expensive lessons over time. But one thing that's good is being a student of your lessons, of the lessons we learned. That's one thing we do very well here. Take notes and pretty much relearn. And so without much ado, we prepared just a brief show reel about Livestock World, and then thereafter we'll have our guest speaker. And then after guest speaker, we'll open up for questions, and then from there we'll have a mini meal, and you guys can be on your way home. All right. We are a tech company, we'll figure this out. Okay, while the tech people can really. Okay. All right, while the tech people figure out their tech things. What else? Oh yeah. So I was saying, one of the biggest lessons we've learned over the last couple of years is saying, yeah, okay, great. Then finish the lessons. They say we grew and we added, from cattle, from pregnant cows, we added free-range cows, which are feedlot cows, and we added macadamia, added also vegetable tunnels. And over that we've learned, hey, doing all these many things, sometimes, when you're doing too many things, you never become really great at one. So as we grow, one of the things that I think you guys are going to see over the next couple of months is really us just distilling our focus very much into cattle, especially the cattle that you feed to become beef. So we're aiming to be the biggest supplier of beef in the continent. That will be achieved through us and our platform funding the growing of cattle. So we'll be able to go to rural areas, buy cattle at a fair price from all farmers, move them to a feeding place where they then grow all the way until they're marketed globally, not just in SA. So that's really our aim. The 5 years to be the biggest beef supplier in this country, supplying everyone else plus overseas. So that's number one. And number two, really on the macadamia and other high value fruits, to be probably the second biggest player in that space. That's also our goal. And then lastly and most importantly, in the acquisition of farmland and making sure that the crowd through our platform is able not just to invest in a cow, but also invest in a farm. Farm for sale, we go buy it, we crowd it, and we buy it, and then we put a tenant who knows what they're doing there, and the tenant can pay rent, and then we grow value not just through the rental, but also through the increase in the value of the land over time. You guys know, if you've been to Devon or Plains, everywhere, in fact, even where we are standing, this used to be a farm before. It was a farm called Houghton Estate, where they were growing I don't know what, but at some point then it becomes property. So that's what we over the next couple of months we introduce to make sure that we've got a clear, distinct focus in terms of cattle, deciduous fruits, and then farmland. That really becomes our key focus of Livestock. Over to you, and then to the speaker. Just 4 minutes.
Crowdfunding, which is one farm, one manager, one herd, but different owners of cows in the herd.
There's the pioneering local app, which is gaining popularity in South Africans with people cashing in on the cow business.
The gap that we saw was a very simple one. One of saying the financial system in the whole world, even though it's nice and fancy, a bulk of the African population find it very complicated. So we were like, okay, Africans understand agriculture and cattle or things that grow, and really it was all about creating an asset class where people can invest in real tangible things and make their money from the growth of those tangible things.
I was looking for something different as an investment class that doesn't carry a lot of risk and is not complicated. So I think when you look at the JSE, and if you are just an ordinary person, it's complicated to trade in shares, and if you're working at the same time to be able to do the right amount of research to pick the right stock to invest in, it's a bit of a challenge. And I was looking at unit trusts and ETFs and all of that, and I felt that I think just the traditional African sense of investing in livestock actually made sense to me. So I felt buying cattle, always having a farm, so Livestock Wealth offers the possibility of actually having livestock without actually having and owning a farm.
I've seen a program on Livestock Wealth on television. It did not register much, and then I read about it on the Sunday paper. It meant a little bit, but then there was this photo where this director of Livestock Wealth was in Senegal, where he was inspecting the farm. So because of the farm being in Senegal, it sort of hit a little bit nearer home, and I thought, I can call this person. So I called him, I introduced myself, and only to find that he was busy to talk with, and he encouraged me to work with him. And last year, after a lot of persuasion, I thought, let me take him on. And it was easier than I had thought. He was able to help us with the finance, with our farms, our farm and the animals being collateral. So since then, we have been into this very, very healthy working relationship as far as development is concerned, farming is concerned.
Once you drive in, you get the experience of the farm, you get to see the trees, you get to see the nursery, the people that work here. So I feel that's really the bigger picture that we wanted to showcase. But I think mostly our farm that's based in Amashau, our community, we're surrounded by a community. So I guess it's just showing the possibility that any land available can be used as long as you can plant something and take care of it.
Growing macadamia is expensive. It takes 6 years for the tree to grow. So that means that the farmer needs to have 6 years of salaries, wages, diesel, fuel, etc. So that's where we come in, allowing private investors like you and me to own one of these trees for as little as 2,000 rand. Then we buy it from the farmer, and then 6 years later, when the tree is fully grown, then the farmer buys it back from us at a profit.
Having livestock as a source of security and wealth is something that's clear. Allow people that were landless to actually own livestock without the hassle of having to have title to land and this land, which has its own problems.
My goal in life is really to see more and more people being financially free.
Thank you. The lights over there. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Uleta. Uleta was born and bred KwaZulu-Natal. He started his early career of studies at Mambosu Technical in KZN, and later in NISA, and eventually at Nets Business School, where he did a master's in entrepreneurship and new venture creation. He's a permanent feature on Ukozi FM, SAFM, where he's mostly talking about economic development, how and where people can grow their wealth through the Amandla Umnotho Institute, which he runs. Without any further ado, Nombosi, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening to everybody. And thank you so much. I will time myself. I have 20 minutes, so I heard that we all have to be at home by 1:30. Yes, so I'd like to be at home as well. I haven't been home for a while. And where's my timer? It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I want to thank you, Scanon. That's the levels of them. That's there. Should we test it? Okay. Testing is not make sure. It's not make sure. So those who know, they know. Even if you laugh, but you know what happened over the weekend. Don't make sure. Well, I've got my wife here as a chief supporter. I'm a parent supporter. And we know what happened. But okay, thank you so much. As they've said, we're glad to come about Kulis Kananda for giving us his time and inviting us to be here. Apologies for being late. The flight just delayed for 3 hours, so luckily I got another one. I've been given kind of carte blanche to just speak about what I do, right, and what the things that we do. It's always a pleasure to listen to Mr. Shays. I've been a follower of his in this vision. As a person with this untiring appetite for growth and development, especially in economy, I always follow people like him who are really making waves in this country and globally to change the lives of many people. I like what you said, the aim is to make everybody financially free. And I wish that would be the case for many people who see your vision and really plug into it, because that's what life is all about, to plug into each other in terms of what each one of us are bringing to the fore in terms of driving ourselves and our economic ambitions, as well as success as business people, as investors, and as South Africans, or as what others would call ordinary South Africans. So it's really an honor for me to always see what you do and appreciate it a great deal. I've been asked to just share what Amanda is about, and the things that are happening in South Africa. We're living in a social, political, economic environment, which means that there's a triune relations between social issues and economic and politics, and none of those elements stand on its own just like that. They are all interrelated, and the key thing about that is to understand the country that we're part of and we've grown from and will die if some of you would want to die here in this country, and to really find meaning even for ourselves as individuals and purpose and find meaning to life in terms of what can we do and contribute. And that's where we come from really. Having grown up under the apartheid system that we all know about, and therefore finding meaning at least in Christ, and then saying what one can contribute positively to their country, and not just sit and take care of only my family, but to be expansive and as well as altruistic about many, many issues. And that's what Amanda Not is about. We're a platform that has sought to engage the public through various platforms, like he has said, of media, of social media, mainstream media, of television and everything else in between, to impact our socio-economic environment, but to push the frontiers of entrepreneurship, because I'm a firm believer in entrepreneurship. I believe that entrepreneurs have what it takes to solve at least half the problems in this country. In this country, we're 60 million individuals or people. Globally, we're 7.8 billion. But in this country, we have, or if you look at the stats of entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs, it's about 680 million people globally who are entrepreneurs. And that accounts for less than 10% of the global people who are entrepreneurs. There's a big buzzing story on Elon Musk these days. I've just been watching him, and he's really making waves. So Twitter now belongs to South Africa, by the way, if you didn't know. Yeah. So our South African brother bought it. So, but what I'm saying is there's less than 10% of the people are supposed to provide jobs, grow wealth, and who are driven really to make success of themselves. And not to say the 92% are not important, they're very important, because we need people who are still going to work and do all sorts of things among us. But there specifically, as we talk entrepreneurship, it's what excites us. I get excited all the time when I meet entrepreneurs, because these are people who are driven. These are people who don't sleep 8 hours. I'm talking to my wife as we're coming here. We don't sleep 10 hours a day, but who really drive themselves to higher heights and at times to depression, because those are things that are not talked about when it comes to the downside of entrepreneurship. And
and not knowing where your next salary is going to come from when you're starting, especially. So that's what we're trying to do. Again, is to move, because a lot of entrepreneurs in our country are on the survivalist mode. People who look more like ourselves, they're survivalist entrepreneurs. And you're talking about your funding ventures. I was talking to some media house in the past few days and saying we may blame government about many things, and especially when it comes to land reform issues. But there's a lot of land that is now sitting in the hands of black people, but it's not working, and it's not being put to full use. I've been in this space for over 20 years and working with communities. I worked so much so that I forgot that I exist myself and my family, until my wife said, "But do you realize that we too have got a life as a family? Can you try and now look inward? Because when you've got a bug to help everybody, you may die a pauper." So it's only recently that I started joining the likes of you to focus more on hardcore entrepreneurship and say, well, let me create some of my own ventures. Because the billion rand I've raised for the past 10 years for entrepreneurs, I could have raised that for myself. But I'm happy to have raised it for many other entrepreneurs. However, the challenge is there's so much land that is lying out there. And when it comes to just people in far-flung areas of this country, they fight. I don't know what I'm going to do, because I'm talking to learned people, enlightened people, and people who are supposed to bow back, and people who are supposed to look back and say, what contribution can we make to elevate and uplift, as well as propel people forward, whether in Limpopo or Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, or Free State, wherever the land reform processes is taking place. There's a lot of money that is moved into these farmers and into the emerging farmers across the country, but it's black hole. I counted one day, because we've got what is called Lighthouse Index in our Mind of Lotto platform, which is a system that's a barometer that measures the movement of money and economic activity in places where money has moved into. And that index has sort of indicated some very scary stats in the area of Umsing, KwaZulu-Natal, as an example, where at some point for 10 years government planned close to R1 billion, if not more, but you can't see any trace of that billion because it's just been a black hole. And sinusitis disease, that is in our government space, where the other hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing, and they all blowing money. This is the problem of this country. There's so much money in this country. If it's channeled properly, it can revive the economies across the length and breadth of this country in an astounding way. So I was looking at that because that place was identified as a highly orphaned place because there were wars there before. And then the money from National Development Agency, money from departments, agriculture, rural development, money from institutions of government, DFIs, went in there in huge chunks, but you can't see a trace of that money. So this happens right across the country. So what we're trying to do, therefore, is we're trying to move, incubate entrepreneurs and move them, graduate them from survivalist to opportunity-based entrepreneurship, so that you do not do fat books because the other person is doing some fat books, but you come up with innovative ideas and you bring up creativity in the space. And that's what is beautiful about entrepreneurship, because the tenets of it, it's innovation, it's creativity, as well as risk taking. So that you become a risk taker, because many people, I'm talking to a dear friend of mine in Barito yesterday on my way to a show where we've got some business, and she's telling me that, hey, I'm tired now of people who invest, and they invest with what I call the microwave mentality. To put in food now, and it's done, we eat. Because a lot of people invest with such mentality. They put money and they want to see returns now. And that is not how we're going to grow this country, because we have to look even on a bigger scale in terms of how our being here and investing and having these discussions contribute to the greater good, the superordinate objectives, not just of ourselves as individuals, but as a country. If If you look at big economies across the world, and you look and marvel at them, they've been built by people like you and me, coming together like this. People who sit around restaurants tables, talking, cracking their skull, thinking about things, what can be done, coming up with creative ideas and saying, this we can do. We can sort of develop here. And there's one area which we are focusing on, which is rural economies, because if you've moved around Eastern Cape, Limpopo, particularly in Limpopo, in the Vanda area, I really love that space because people have done amazing things. And I think it's been a benchmark of rural economic development, where you see people now building huge infrastructure in terms of their own homes. But that's the gap that we need to just plug in, which is so much of a greenfield before it gets plugged in by others, because there's no vacuum in this life. If you don't move in fast enough, somebody else is gonna move. So those are issues, and I'm even challenging you because I know this is Gauteng, which was built out of gold, which was built out of mining. This is the mining city, right? So everything else that you see is as a result of that strategic, sector of mining, the mineral energy or mineral complex. And what needs to be done is you have to go back, Operation Buyelegaya, and go back to the places where you come from as well. Not that this is not your home, this is your home. Have your home here, but go down to the Eastern Cape. Who's from the Eastern Cape? Okay, oh, thank you. Eastern Cape, beautiful place, beautiful province with amazing, amazing potential when it comes to agriculture. Would love to challenge people, and that's what we do as well. So we go back to Limpopo, to Eastern Cape, let's develop those places. So we're graduating people then from survivalist to opportunity, because opportunity entrepreneurship is the kind of entrepreneurship that is driven through research, is driven through research and development, is driven through proper feasibility studies, where you know that I'm plugging into this gap because this gap has got so many people who are players in it, and therefore there's a gap for me to capture the share of market. And that's what we can teach people. And beyond just the classroom, beyond our university qualifications, but to just make sure that we teach people to agitate for that kind of entrepreneurship. I always say again, with due respect, for those are motivational speakers who tell you that so and so did this without matric, etc. Those are outliers. Those are people that find a few in between. Entrepreneurship that is proper and kosher is driven through education. Because even if you didn't have matric or you're a dropout, like they will tell you of big names, they dropped out from 100, right? So that means they were not dropouts per se, it's just that they got tired, right? And the thing is, we need to encourage people to even go beyond your formal education and do research about the spaces that they want to get into. Just coming over here, I'm with a lady again who's into moringa. She's processing moringa into different products. I've got it in my car now, a lot of products, pap, moringa, oils and all of those types of things. That's what we need right now in this country, because we are now doing what, COP27 in Egypt, all that. So that means the space of carbon emissions, the space of a circular economy is huge. And if we cannot tap into that space and begin to understand it and get into it and say, how do we become part and parcel of biomass, of alternative energy sources, of making sure that these plastics that are swallowed by sharks in the seas don't end up there and killing our marine life, because there's a lot of things that are happening in the marine life that is as a result of our negligence here on Earth. So I'm saying, if you then talk moringa plantations, if you talk cannabis, which is the spaces that we work in, which we're talking, all these essential oils businesses, whether you're talking your castor plants plantation, or you're talking your Lipia, Jamanica, Suzwane, or you're talking about all these different essential oils, including that which you put when you're cooking. What is it called? Bay leaves, olive oil, all those types of things that you put in there. Because there's good, let's keep it one to. By mistake, sometimes there are curry leaves, all of those things that you put in. So we've got to be able to say, those are spaces that we need to move into, especially in as far as the agri sectors are concerned. That's opportunity-based entrepreneurship. There's a whole host of things that we do. We actually have got over 40 associations that we try. And I take this. I'm left with 5 minutes, but I'm already beginning to get warm.
Only was now warming up.
Only now, just warming up. So it means you can literally give me 2 hours. So we are, well, let's get into that space. I was with one of the professors who came up with a lot of spices in this country in Cape Town, who's our mentor. He's a 90-year-old man, a lovely old gentleman from Wits. And he tells me that, you know, I like oros. I don't know how many of you like oros. Me, I like oros. Right? And he tells me that inside oros, there's 16 essential oils. Did you know that? Yes, there's 16 essential oil plants. So it's not junk food or junk drink at once. But a lot of essential oils. You know what? It's so nice. So now, it is just one section of the investments that we do to drive issues of entrepreneurship. We've got to really drive this, you know, and create an entrepreneurial ecosystem. This country must become such. I want to challenge you to be part of saying you want to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Because we don't have enough time to talk about these things. You must just go as well study about this. You know, in America, you've got your Silicon Valley, same as in Israel, same as in your China now, it's in Germany, etc. Those are countries which were really, you know, ensured that they create their countries in an entrepreneurial ecosystem through putting up certain infrastructures that are going to be activating the mind of individuals in those countries, not just in the ICT space, but across sectors and subsectors of the economy. Because we've got to think innovatively, you know, and creatively. So we need to develop this country, be part of it, and make sure that it moves. It's not going to be moved by politicians, with the due respect to politicians who are here. But I'm saying let's not only leave it to politicians alone. We need to be movers and shakers and shapers of our own destiny as people of South Africa. So that's what we do to try and drive entrepreneurship, to try and instill a sense of urgency towards the issues that this country is grappling with. Because if I were to talk political, economic issues, you know what is happening. But things are not going this way, they're going this way. So we therefore cannot afford to create an island of riches and a sea of poverty around us, right? And it's very important for us to be mindful, to have a social and consciousness that understands we ought to change the status quo for the stability of this country. Because it will go of no use to say, well, I'm armed enough, I've got enough guns, I'm taking my kids, because I see many people taking people to shooting ranges to saying, prepare for something. We don't know what is going to be happening. But that's not the solution. Because you can arm yourself and say, I'm going to be shooting anybody who's coming to me, but you're not solving the problem. The problem is you are growing the base. You're not going to shoot all these people and finish them. You've got to find a solution of engaging everybody. Here in Alex, you see, this is Rosebank. Across the city, but there is Alex with big rats like this, eating kids' sweet. Some of you don't know that I'm talking from experience because I work there as well. So the question is, what are we doing about that? Because there are young people, women, disabled individuals who are entrepreneurial, who would like to change their situations coming from that place. Why don't we go and engage? So this is a global phenomenon where people's consciousness is rising to understand that they belong to, they've got to have a part of this cake. But entrepreneurship, I believe, is key when we share it nicely as we're talking tonight and saying, besides just investing in different asset classes, you know the different asset classes. So this is one of them, the livestock wealth, which is so important. But you've got cash and cash equivalents, equity. I'm not an expert, but I have gained experience in some of these asset classes, having invested in them myself as I was growing up and learned my lessons and burning my fingers and having sat at the JSE at some point for one of their London-based outfits, and having to learn a lot practically about what is happening in some of these spaces which are so crucial for us to understand. But the key thing is to understand there's a bigger market out there. There's bigger potential in South Africa, which has to do with a number of things other than real estate or commodities or derivatives or currencies. I think I saw one of the persons commenting that JSE investments is somewhat that people would not necessarily understand. But this is the type of investment which is very well understood. Chickens, all forms of livestock, rabbits, we're into rabbits, big time, opening markets, investing in rabbits, as well as goats. He knows one of almost your mentee because he's learning from you. He's trying goat meat like crazy. I just came back from Chicago and Madison to sign some agreements in terms of importing and exporting. And Chicago was there sitting big billionaire guys and they are telling me, well, we've 20,000 restaurants in this city. Bring in your meat, bring in everything that you produce, but it must be FDA compliant and all other standards, as you know, in terms of hazard, food safety, etc., etc. So the world should be our playground. And that is why I appreciate you, Scanan, because you are not just only bound here locally, but you are really looking outward and saying, how do I impact the world? Not to mention intra-African trade. Oh, this continent. As they say, Africa is not for sissies. I'm sorry if it sounds otherwise that term, but fact is Africa, our continent where we are, is one area and space that we have not exploited. Actually, as we speak now, as I sit down, China is very much aware of the import substitute strategy that Africa is busy designing. Because we're not going to be fed from China any longer and forever in perpetuity. Something must change at some point. So we've got to change those. I'm into shoes. One of my businesses is in shoes. We're producing 1,000 shoes a day. But guess what? We consume 280 million shoes a year annually. I dare not ask women how many pairs of shoes do they have. Because they buy them every month for every function. I can just ask you to go and check how many pairs of shoes do you have, how many do you discard. Some of them are just in boxes. You're not wearing them. But there's 200 plus 80 million pairs of shoes, and we only produce 25% of those in this country. 75% we import. So in other words, I can talk about toothpicks that we import nowadays. I can talk about all forms of bags and clothes and etc. etc. We now engage in import substitute strategy, where we're saying, if we can just carve out for ourselves 10% of those imports, do you know how huge that is? It's huge because the turnover of the GDP size of that shoes alone is quite massive, and we need to change that and turn that situation around. So my 20 minutes is over. But I wanted to say there's so much more to talk about when it comes to issues of entrepreneurship. And I am a firm believer in livestock wealth. I believe you are in the right hands. And actually, I'm going to invest as well. I want you to mentor me too, because we've got over 100,000 entrepreneurs on our platform. So we've started our own crowdfunding, but it's not livestock-based, it's just broad-based livestock, crowdfunding. So that we can even take some of that money and put it into livestock wealth. But, because you've been on the mill, you understand what are the happenings. We should be able to learn from you in terms of what to do and what not to do, to harness the power of the numbers. And women, ladies' house, those who are in ladies' house, I don't know what they are in, but because I checked the trends just across, I saw ladies' house have got 2.4 million members in different groups on Facebook, for those that are surprised what that thing is. So social media, and if you were just to look at that, it's a huge number. And I know it's a platform where they talk men and stuff, etc. But I challenge them as well to say, please, if you were to harness the power of these numbers, because women are the decision makers everywhere, in including our homes, for what we eat and what we wear and everything else. So if you could just look at those things and go and challenge some of our colleagues who may not be here, if you've got a bit of influence with some of them, change will begin to happen. I thank you.
Before you sit down, because maybe there's one or two questions. I do have a question, maybe as the first one. Like based on you are in media everywhere else, and you sit in other seats where other people don't sit. Where do you think this country, South Africa, is going to be come 2025 or 2026?
It's going to become what South Africans want, what the South Africans do or don't do. I've been reading Illuminati, which is one of the scenario planning exercises, and the one by Rampene and the one by Clem Santam for many years. And I've always said those documents and those people, they are prophets in their marketplace to understand what the country will end up being if certain things are not done, and if certain things are done and done correctly. My crystal ball for the next, 2025?
Yeah.
In 2025, number one, I see this country having lots and lots of entrepreneurs and people who are driven, who want to make a huge difference and who want to break the barriers, who want real change, not cosmetic change, right? That's what I see happening. This is based on the fact that empirically we've been on the ground. We see things, and therefore it's not just crystal ball gazing, but it's more to do with the scientific elements of it as a country. But politically, if we do not have a proper leadership, we need leadership at the highest level. That's a dispenser of enthusiasm that will drive things in this country, and not just people who are sitting and letting the country be on autopilot, but who are going to be on the ground. And we need an engaged, and I see an engaged people who are not just sitting, but who are engaged literally in terms of where the country needs to go. That's at least what I see. I may be wrong, but this is where I'm sitting in my small corner, looking at where the country is going. But on the negative, we may have more riots, and we may have more of instability if we do not nip things in the bud. I work with both black and white entrepreneurs, and I challenge my white brothers across the country and say, with Dr. Mbisana here, we're talking about the revolution of conscience, and to say let's work together to make things work. Let's not be too much into politics. Politics is very divisive. People have a conscience. You can talk to a person and say, this is the situation. I was in New York a few years ago, and I sat there being an MC for the heads of states in one gala dinner where I was invited. There was our president, then President Zuma as well. And I had a moment of talking to white Americans, and they were glued to what I was saying, to a point where they pulled me aside and said, why don't we write us a book? Educate us. Get the point? Was what we are talking about, we've never heard. And then I realized that everybody is prepared to learn from the other if there is that space where we can exchange and say, the situation actually in real time is like this, not as media broadly puts it, if it's biased media, because we know we've got some biased media sometimes. Long answer, but positives, as well as the minors.
Any other question?
Hello. So just a quick one. How would you advise one to position themselves then
Because I know you mentioned something about going further than formal study, or we have less entrepreneurs. So how does one then sort of position themselves, say maybe Bakshile, Ellen, or say just you want to get into entrepreneurship or this agricultural business, how do you then sort of position yourself? I'm not sure if you guys had me.
Position yourself, I think, is a very, very important, phrase. You ought to, we may not all be researchers and maybe understand the architecture of South Africa's socio-economic environment, but at least that space that you want to get into, maybe first from just one step back, from the position of understanding what makes up South Africa. South Africa is a construct. There's nothing called a country. A country is a country because it's been declared a country by people in that country who then would put rules and law and regulations and construct it and say it's going to be a country because of 1, 2, 3 things. Every country is just a construct. It's a formation of people of some sort by the people who say this is our country. Well, we can tomorrow wake up and say Africa is a country if we so wish, so that we cut down borders and do all sorts of things. But you position yourself by understanding, that sector that you want to get into. Study, research. Make sure that you are aware of the livestock environment, and specifically the cattle, because livestock is vast. In economic terms, you've got primary production and the primary sector, you have a secondary sector, and tertiary sector. The primary sector, you've got your ocean, that constitute ocean's economy. You've got your primary agriculture, and you've got your mining, all water bodies and everything else forms part of the primary sector. But even when you now move straight into the waters or into the sea, even there, it's huge. You mine in the sea for gold, for diamond. So you can see, studying an environment, I like your narrow focus. Also, because your narrow focus, at least you're doing 2 or 3 things, but you've perfected yourself more on this, as well as some of the associated other sectors. So I think that's a long answer.
Thank you.
Great. I'm honored. I just liked what you said about entrepreneurship, and I just want to know if one is interested in entrepreneurship over and above funding from government, your GDPs, your MEFs, where can one get access to information if one is, because there's a lot of red tape there and a lot of rejection, events like this or over and above government funding, where can one go, where can one tap into if one is interested in entrepreneurship? Because that's what I want to say.
Just very quickly, I think if one is interested maybe in funding, in funding for entrepreneurship purposes, a lamentation first. We've got developmental funding institutions which are not developmental. We've been saying this for many years, right? I'm borrowing money for our factory in Durban from one of the institutions, Italy, just because she happens to be maybe having some issues with the ITC here and there, and I'm giving them R1 million worth of equipment. I'm saying, take this, give me R500,000. They come back and say they're rejecting. I'm saying, take my assets. You get the point? At least I'm better off with about assets. Other people don't even have that. So, is that developmental? You can talk to me about your NCR and all the nonsense, because some of those things are nonsense. They're nonsensical. They are keeping us enslaved and deprived, because each time I go and ask for R1 million worth of a car in terms of this, I get it. But for business, I don't get it. So what kind of a developmental state that is? We're not a developmental state. We are very, I don't want to use strong words, right? But you get what I mean. Right? So we have got vulture capitalists, which is venture capital, right? So in some other quarters, it's called vulture capital, but I prefer to call it venture capital. you've got angel investors, people who bring in money, people who look at your ideas and say, well, I can fund it. You've got crowdfunding, putting money together. We're about to hlukanisa our stock funds, over 50 billion rands. I think it's one and they are pouring that money to big institutions every year. And it's just a vicious cycle which doesn't take us everywhere as African people, particularly. So those are some of the things we need to kind of find and look into, but we must never stop challenging the DFIs. I must state, Canada, with your permission, on the 25 and 26 of this month, if you go to our website, amandla.co.za, we've got a conference in Durban. It's a national conference that we have annually, where we are talking. I'm bringing the DTIC, I'm bringing all these people, but importantly, the officials who deal with incentives. Incentives are in billions there, if you didn't know. They go to the same old. They are into textile, they're into clothing, they're into biomass, they're into agriculture, huge incentives. And we secured one of the incentives. Was I challenged them? I said, we need it. Because it goes to, if you look at the demography of this country in terms of race, you've got literally over 80% being African people, isn't it? And then 10% colored people, and then 9.5% being white, and 1.4% being Indians, right? So I'm talking political statistics, the demography. The laws, as they are busy scrapping BEE laws now, which in of themselves, they're not helping many people, they're helping the politically connected. But that aside, the laws of these BEE policies, including black industrialists, which some of us were party to, and when it was being created. If you look at how many people who are now called black, has it empowered demographically? I always make this example even in media. When Natal government has had to hire me some couple of years ago and say, then come and help us, how do we change the situation around? I said, be determined to change it because of the 34 companies that you've empowered being black industrialists, 28 are Indian companies. There's nothing wrong with our Indian brothers and sisters. They're doing well and they've grasped the way of doing business. But the issue is, and then 28 are Indian companies, and maybe 4 or 5 are both collaboration of Indian and black African people, and then 2 are African people only. Is that thing covering what it's supposed to cover? It's not. So in other words, again, there's a reason to that. Because they come to Mr. Naidu, and Mr. Naidu says, well, I've got collateral, I've got other stuff in terms of the business that we have in down this road. And they come to me and say, Klaba, I'm from Nongoma, the deep rural areas, where my wife didn't want to go to, but she has to. You know, and I come from that place. I've got no collateral, no asset base. I just have an idea, and they reject me. But venture and capital, all of them, can always engage in that. I think that's why I had this.
Well, it was me.
Thank you.
Maybe I'm being audible now. Thanks for the feedback. My question is, speaking of Nongoma, I'm just thinking, my question is, what's an estimate of prospective entrepreneurs whose dreams will be killed by issues in the macro environment? I mean, I'm running a restaurant in Nongoma, and then now I'm subjected to issues of load shedding and water shortages. And then it begs the question, how many of us will really overcome that and make it in that space? And what options do we have, if at all?
Look, it's a very important question. The macro environmental space in South Africa isn't hard to see, we know that. We just closed one of our businesses in the shore, so I'm trying to find other alternatives in terms of power. Because in a small business, working capital and liquidity at that stage, when you are building the business, is very crucial. And literally we closed, also producing blocks, supposed to produce 3,000 plus blocks daily. But we have had to close temporarily, at least, hoping that we can revive the business. And many other businesses, including the shoemaking that I'm talking about, I'm making myself as an example, not to mention thousands of other businesses just running. And you need additional capital to maybe have a generator. So that is why I said, at the highest level of this country, we need to real change, right? Without mentioning political names and all sorts of things. I think our people in South Africa are moving beyond political nonsense and being deceived by politicians who will say, we shall do this, and then nothing happens. We've seen the likes of Papas, who belongs to the DA. He's being hated even by myself, everybody. We've seen Gayton McKenzie in 100 days in office. I don't give a damn what Gayton McKenzie's political affiliation is. If Gayton McKenzie is delivering this, that's my man. You get the point? So I want to see more of such. So at the highest level in this country, things have to give. There must be real change, but we must lobby and influence that change. Let's not be bystanders and sit and be afraid. Because now I'm unfair. Because jobs, just overbroke, as Robert Kiyosaki would say. The microspace, this is about the engineering, right? That's all I can say right now, because it's messing us up. I'm going to guide it by you.
Thanks for your insights. Appreciate it. I think just an observation, maybe then a question. The observation is that I'm glad to hear you talking about R&D when it comes to entrepreneurship, because everyone is encouraged to go into being an entrepreneur, and a lot of startups or organizations fail, I think, as a result of the gap in understanding either their markets, their product, and how to actually propel that. So, so I think for me it's always a worry when I hear everyone saying I want to become an entrepreneur without an appreciation of the reality of entrepreneurship. So thanks for that. I suppose my question is for people like me, and maybe I'm just disillusioned having tried it and realized that my gifts and talents are best used in corporate as an example. How do people that are not entrepreneurs, because not everyone is an entrepreneur, contribute or participate in this beyond just putting money? So investing is one thing, but how else can we contribute? Because you would not appreciate that for depending on what you do in the space that you are, there could be constraints. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts around how else we can participate if we're not active participants from an entrepreneurial and ownership perspective. Thanks.
Okay, quickly. There are entrepreneurs, there are intrapreneurs. Entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs within a system who kind of work for Livestock Wealth. And those are people who are entrepreneurs who bring in newness and life and breathe in life into any system. And if you're an entrepreneur who is an intrapreneur, you are able to grow in the system as well and be able to rise up to the highest ranks because you are entrepreneurial but within the system. So that's a mega contribution. This thing of entrepreneurship, truly speaking, is inborn. It's in all of us. Maybe there could be a huge argument or debate around that. Just like all people born a leader, is a leader born or a leader made. We are all leaders. That's what my belief is, right? You can argue that point, but we all have entrepreneurial spirit from it. And it's just like the bounds of it, depends with each one of us as to how have you pushed, those limits for you to say, well, I can go all out and leave my leader brand and salary and going there. So that's a contribution that we need to make. But even for yourself now, personally, I think there are some classes that I skewed through. It's very important because the key thing is you ought to grow your base and grow your wealth. And every one of us want to make sure that we leave something behind for our kids. There's a Bible that says the good man leaves the inheritance for his children's children. So you don't want to leave your children if you do have some poor, and there's different asset classes that I think needs to be drilled in. I have 7 of them here to talk to, but we don't have time for that. But all these asset classes, you can invest in them and really make a contribution. I hope I'm answering. Thank you.
And last but not least.
Yeah, the board.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I personally think that South Africa is at the perfect point for almost revolutionarism and entrepreneurship, as you say. But more than us blaming politicians and the people at the top for the current conditions that we live in, how do we get rid of the competitiveness and foster collaboration within us, especially people of my color? Because the minute somebody becomes an entrepreneur, the minute somebody becomes an entrepreneur and they start making a name for themselves, I think usually their biggest stumbling block is the people around them who become jealous, and instead of collaborating, they start competing and wanting to see that person down.
Thank you, Vex. Collaboration, maybe let me say unhealthy competition. Competition itself is good. Because, you know, Fly SFA is my favorite flight because it's very punctual and they've really, I don't know how they've done their model because at some point you'll be flying, actually the whole airline industry, you've been flying for 500-600 rand to Durban, you know. And I remember flying for the very first time 24 years ago, right? And I paid 450 rands coming to Johannesburg. Their time. So to date, we're still paying almost the same amount. That's how competitive the space is. That's why they get out quickly. They come in fast and get out quickly. The airlines, the different competitors there. Because competition is very healthy to have a number of players. And I can tell you, Uskananda here is already gonna, because of his vision. I remember William saying, I'm now forgetting this thing of singing because there are many people who are imitating me. I'm tired of hearing myself when I'm So, and I said to Will, may his soul rest in peace. I said, we must be happy that you are raising people. There are a lot of Rebecca Lopez, you know, Lundi and others. Because as soon as you rise, there are people who are going to want to imitate you. You know, accept that that's because you really become an attraction. And so same as livestock wealth. But first mover advantage becomes key because you're supposed to lead the pack. And they're supposed to look at you and say, wow, but you lead it. Because if you don't, you must ask Nokia. So competition must be healthy. But collaboration is key, right? Collaboration is key in that we must not view ourselves or each other as competitors, especially at this level. I always advocate for that. Don't view the next person as a competitor to a point where you shut them off completely. I know there are competition rules. That's why the DTI, the LDC, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, to oversee the unhealthy competition. But fact is, there are associations. Associations are meant for like-minded organizations who are in the same sector. That's why you've got the Bank 7 and all those companies that are belonging to one group. They sit together and discuss their own stuff. As much as they are competitors, but they sit and discuss their own stuff. And that's why they are a monopoly to date, and nobody has challenged them from Begi to Mandela to Begi to Mutante to Zuma to Ramaphosa. Tell of one black bank that has been created in all of these presidents' life. That's an unhealthy competition for me. Because we still have 17 banks in total with private banks in this country, but no change has happened. Why don't they give 10 or 5 commercial banking licenses, at least to black people who they want to empower? They're not doing that. So that just touches me the other way. So we need collaboration, because these people, they collaborate in one way or the other, okay? Not collusion. Okay, maybe it's a semantics issue, collusion and collaboration. Today we are no longer refining, that truth in this country, shutting it off completely, because the COP27 now is happening, and the COP17 and all the other COPs, they have said carbon emissions, South Africa must invest $20 billion to get rid of carbon emissions, etc. And South Africa says don't have. So SAPI, refinery there is closed. It's shutting down. And many refineries are going to shut down in this country. So we only have one refinery in the continent. It's in Nigeria by Aliko Dangote, who's invested $22 billion, and kudos to him. But the issue is, that's oligopoly, and they decide what happens in this world. So I'm trying to draw your attention to whether it's oligopoly or monopoly or unhealthy people sitting behind and deciding in the spaces. People do talk eventually, they collaborate. That's what I'm trying to say. And when one Munyela this one is successful and therefore my competitor must kill him or kill her, and that's wrong. That's a mind that has kept us down to date, especially as Black people, because we are rough. I work with taxi people, and it's sad to see what's happening there. Many of them, they don't own the value chain because of the unhealthy competition. It's a world of the gun. And even now, it may not be a world of the gun among professionals, but it's a world of the gun of destroying each other instead of collaborating and uplifting each other. Please, Babu, you asked a very important last question, my brother. Let's do that, let's collaborate. If we collaborate, we'll go very far. As the African saying goes, one can go this far, but two go far much further. So we need to collaborate to grow in entrepreneurship and in business as Black people, as we've done. But let's not just pay lip service. Let's say we're supporting this vision of livestock wealth. We're putting our own money with no short-termism, with no micro mentality. 5 years, I'm waiting. Even if I happen to vamoose, she'll be here. I mean, the men die in right? And kids. When we have, yeah, bomb like that.
Lovely, the key.
Okay, we're at the close, guys. Cognizant of time. Sibongile, where is she? Are you ready? She's going to do the votes of thanks. Always was confused about this votes of thanks when I was young. What are they voting about? Who's going to count the ballots? It was like very close between the votes of thanks and when someone saying last but not least, like least, which list is it talking about? But anyway, only later, no listing of second language English, not the smallest, LEA, not LIST, but we learn, we grow, here we are. So over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in the wonderful name of Jesus Christ the man. It shows. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for making it to this our very first this year after COVID. We're having this investor session. We used to have them, but not in this style, whereby we're having a guest speaker, a special guest speaker, someone who is so influential like you, Eva Kanda. So thank you so much for making it through. We know it's during the week and some of you have got other commitments, but you chose to just be with us. So we truly appreciate as Livestock Wealth. We firstly would like to thank you, Babno Osi, and of course with his beautiful wife. I love her so much, and especially you had explained that you had other commitments in Durban, but you sacrificed, you compromised to be with us. So really, we truly appreciate, and yeah, we honor that. I would like to thank our guests, people who RSVP'd, especially those who RSVP'd as soon as we sent the invitation, and then you chimed and you said we are coming. Really, we truly appreciate you. I would not forget to appreciate our staff members for is waving. for the effort that they're putting into the business. And this business will not have been where it is today if it wasn't for your efforts. You know, as I was just going, for the very first time, we just sat down with Tulani and putting together all of those clips, and I'm like, God, you know, I almost cried because I looked at the effort that we have put together, you know, so like, yeah, thank you so much, and I know that God is still gonna keep you in this business for many years, you know, and yeah, maybe you become a CEO. I don't know which happened to Shezi. Shaman. Yeah, and our catering team as well. They prepared very nice meal for us. We did say it's light snack. Yeah, light snack. So yeah, they prepared very nice food. Sponsored by Farmers Club. Yeah, we're in the business of meat as well. Captain keeps on waving. You might as well just come in front. Yeah, so yeah, I would like to really thank everybody. Tulani is the one who actually put together all of this. Sure, I kept on saying, hey, I don't want this, I want that. No, cut this, you know, I was more of a director, production director. So yeah, thank you. But without any further ado, okay, sorry, technology is against us here. I'm sure everyone is asking themselves, why do they have flowers for the guy? But yeah, we'd like to thank, where's the other gift? Yes, please bring it. Would like to, I'm married, so I know every what does the English say? In every success, behind every successful man, there's always a powerful woman. So we'd like to appreciate you, Mamnambelo, for everything, because we know also he did say that you're going to fetch him. And I like, just the blink of an eye, you guys were already here. You know, so yeah, thank you so much for everything, for allowing him to be with us. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. And then this one is for Ish. It's heavy. Yeah, it's heavy. Yes, and this one sits in the Babnoskosi, Knees and Sute, where the Nomdin Wako, courtesy of Farmers Club and Livestock Well. Probably that is heavy. Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, dinner is ready.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know if she's
no, that is all the meat you guys are eating is the same. Is Farmers Club meat. The same meat we used to supply to one of those bigger chains who are very pricey. Which we deliver directly to your home. Yes. Farmers Club, you can check out our website. The subscription model where you can just get this box like this every month to your home for a small family, large family. So it's really, I don't want to talk for the meat, but it will talk for itself. Yes. Yeah. And then you can get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to be of service to you and your family. Wow, that's good. Thank you. Some funding just directed to the meeting.
Okay, and then also we thank Ushezi for opening up Livestock Wealth. Thank you. You're such an inspiration. Thank you. I know I said this was not your night, but yeah, it will be unfair. Not to appreciate. Thank you. Okay, the food is bedside.
It's